What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the PT Coffee Cast, brought to you by The Movement. My name is Dalton, and alongside me today is my beautifully bearded friend, William. William, how are you doing today?
Doing good, sitting on a nice angle here,
Yeah, angled.
making sure that the viewers can see us.
Yeah, our production is slowly getting better. Now we have a table that's propped up our video camera, which is the iPhone. And I think we're moving up in the world.
We're moving up slowly but surely. There's some constraints we have to work within, but hopefully, you'll see it just continue to iron out, get better and better.
Yeah, the dream studio one day will come. It's in our minds. We see it in our mind's eye, but it just hasn't been brought into the realm of reality yet.
A little callback to some of our previous episodes. We're all about that ambiance.
That's hilarious. Before we dive in, I want to hear your second favorite thing about the mentorship.
My second favorite, I don't remember what I said my first one was.
Well,
Um.
you said that you were looking most forward to the imposter syndrome.
Okay. Second thing. I think the mentorship's ability to provide a framework for people is something that I'm excited about, because I feel like there's so much conflicting and information. There's just a lot of information out there, and when you go through physio school, you really get taught to just try to get through everything. And just from mentoring people over the last few years, I've really recognized that is something that a lot of people struggle with. Just, what do I really need to get through? How do I get through it all? And it ends up being very scattered. And so what we've done is really helped provide people with not clinical knowledge, but with a framework for how to think about and structure your sessions. And I think that's just going to be very actionable, something that you can implement right away, and people will find that really useful.
Yeah, love it.
What about you? What's your second? Do you remember what you said?
I said the coffee chats.
Okay, yeah.
I think the other thing I'm looking forward to is people consuming how we talked over or delivered on the actual content itself. So we have our PDF modules that go out to everyone, but then you and I, I guess we could say lectured over them, but we tried to bring the podcast into that kind of lecture style. So I had a lot of fun with that, and I'm excited to just see how that translates over to the consumer, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a cool point, because I think people are going to have fun with it, right? We're not robots. We have a style, right? If you've listened to our podcast at all.
It's one way to put it.
Yeah. We just, we don't take ourselves too seriously. But we also really understand the value of some of the stuff that we're putting out there. And so those videos really help just give more insight into what's on the slides, so that you can dive deeper.
Yeah. So if you guys are interested in that mentorship that we're talking about, our wait list is still open. We've had people jump on that wait list, which we're super excited about. If you're interested in being on that so you can get notified for the application to be part of the first cohort, you should sign up. You can do that in the show notes of this episode or through the link on our Instagram, which if you aren't following our Instagram, you should definitely do that. It's at PT Coffee Cast. If you aren't subscribed to the podcast on your podcast platform, you should definitely do that. And you can watch our beautiful faces on YouTube now. So we've been consistent putting out the YouTube video version of our podcast, which I'm excited about because that's something that I've wanted to do for a while and have struggled to stay on top of. But I think we're hitting our stride a little bit there. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We hope to be able to add some more content to that channel over the years as it develops. But for now, you can check out the full video podcasts there. Speaking of content, That's going to be the topic of today's podcast.
That's right. And it just happened to be content day at the movement.
Yeah, why don't we start there? What is that?
Well, yeah, so basically what we do here with our team is every month for about 2 hours, we basically shut down the clinic. And our whole team gets together. We talk about, we create posts, basically. We create posts for our Instagram page, for blogs, for YouTube, for whatever. Sometimes it's more internal stuff that we're creating, but we get together, we create that as a team, we brainstorm, we make the post right then and there, we film videos, we create captions. It's always a good time.
Take thumbnails.
Tape thumbnails. We're getting better at those thumbnails.
Yeah.
Try to draw the people in.
The hook. I'll come in. Yeah, and I think that is, like, for me, super exciting because obviously, like, we've been creating content for a while now. So to be able to, like, facilitate the content creation amongst our team has been, like, so fun. And I think that's kind of what sparked, like, this conversation on the podcast as we were kind of getting ready to record. You know, we tend to have things lined up in the hopper that we want to talk about, but then also, like, as we're making coffee for the episode, we find topics that we feel like would be fun to talk about, and that was one of these, and that's what brought this episode out today. And you know, I think what we wanted to elaborate on is, like, outside of just the fun of creating content, and I think the collaboration that it brings amongst our team, being able to work together and have fun with it and be a little silly and bring our flavor to the content, is we believe that, like, content is development. And we've realized the importance of the creation of the content in developing ourselves as clinicians, but also working with our newer clinicians that are coming on the team, how actually important I think that content creation is to their development.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, it's a bit different. Like, for us as a brand, we have a vision. We want to transform the way people view healthcare, right? So, like, we have a vision, and it's for that. Like, that's a big reason why we put out content, right? But then from, like, an individual level, it really can be a lot about development, because there's so many transferable skills that help you clinically through creating content.
Yeah, do you have a couple that come to the top of mind for you? Like, when you say those, like, what are those transferable skills you think?
I think one of the things about, like, putting content out is it forces you to think about the way you deliver it, right? So meaning, like, making it digestible, you know, because people scroll through pretty quick. So you have to, like, try to make it easy to digest. And it's sort of like a parallel to working with your clients, and you start to realize, oh, I'm probably being, like, very scientific. Maybe I'm talking too much. And so creating the content, it helps you practice, like, the delivery of how you help somebody understand something.
Yeah, and I think that delivery, you know, when it comes to creating content, and now because it's such an attention economy, you have to make it unique. You have to make it your own. You have to make it something that, like, hooks people in, tells a story, is kind of educational but funny at the same time. And I think that thinking about how you take the knowledge you have in your head as a clinician, which is a lot of knowledge and a lot of value, and then figuring out how to transfer that to the person in front of you, which is going to vary from person to person in clinic. But, like, thinking about those things are important, and I think content can drive the way that you do that. And I think for me, it's helped me a lot in a couple of ways. It's made me, like, obviously simplify things, so not as much jargon. I think that's the number one thing that most people can get out of it. But then now I think about how can I almost tell a story to have people understand what I'm trying to teach them. And, like, I think of, okay, how can I lay out my questioning, or how can I lay out the session or the movement or the piece that I want to get across to that client, so that they like go on a journey almost to finding that answer. And it sounds a little bit like out there, but the more I've created content and realized, okay, we have to tell a story, we have to make people put themselves in the shoes of what we're writing or what we're talking about on video, like how do I kind of translate that to my client? And I've taken a lot of that and implemented it, and I think it's I know it's a effective way to learn how to like communicate.
Yeah, it's a really good point what you said about the stories, because when you're like creating a piece of content, like you'll often take them from, like, you have to sort of structure it like beginning, middle, end, right? And you're taking someone through like a thought process and a story, right? And trying to deliver that in a way, or communicate that in a way that people can grasp onto, right? And then clinically, that might look like you are implementing, you're asking certain questions in your subjective to try to pull some type of thing that your client is struggling with, whether it's like a mindset perspective or like an injury or whatever, right? And then you're using your objective to sort of highlight, what's actually going on there. Mm-hmm. And then you're tying that together with like what you can do about it and how that ties into the plan to get them back to whatever their goal is. And so it's like, if you're really good at pulling those stories out, right, then you can actually deliver a plan in a really impactful way that helps somebody stay on board. And I think that's what you can gain a lot of that from putting content out there. Mm-hmm. It helps you practice that skill.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think like the other thing on top of it, I remember early on in our days, it's like as we were students and we were learning things, it actually challenged us to go out there and look up like research and go out and look into different ways of doing things and trying to understand them, and then take that information and write it in a piece of content and put it out, with the potential of us being wrong in a sense, or having something that wasn't like maybe worded right, or we misread this or whatever it may be, and have people actually give feedback on that, right? And like you take it with a grain of salt, I think, because you guys all know how social media can get. It can get very like toxic, and I think some of that stuff isn't beneficial, but there is actually a lot of positive critical feedback that we've gotten, that we've learned from, and I think it just challenges you to like go out and learn something and then try and synthesize that information and then put it in your own words and put it out to be judged, essentially, which can like help you learn like where you mess up. I think that there's value to that as a clinician, because there's a ton of times where we have to go and learn something new and then try to understand it and then try to figure out how we can make it transferable to the client, and then maybe we mess up with it and we get feedback from the client, or we get feedback from another clinician who's working on your team who may be like, hey, maybe you should think about this, because that's not necessarily maybe the right way to approach it. And I think there's a lot of parallels there that are important for clinicians to experience, and like content's one way that you can like almost practice that repetition of doing it.
Like forces you to learn, consolidate information, reflect.
Yeah. And similar to what we were discussing earlier, like, Jess, one of our physios here, is like diving into pelvic health, right? And I'm super stoked about that, because I think, one, she's going to crush it because she's just like, she's a superstar, but two, it's super valuable information that there's a gap. There's a big gap between like what is being learned in the clinical realm and how that's being transferred to clients, because we hear people a lot coming in like women having issues with all of this stuff, but not understanding how to take that new information that we're learning in research and implement it to their day-to-day. And so it excites me, because like Jess is like super invested in that, and now she's learning, and then she's sitting down with you to try to understand, okay, how can we then create content to make this messaging easily digestible, exciting, people actually wanting to consume it and read it, make it be in our language and our branding and how we want to show up to the people who consume our content. Like, that's really cool. And I think you can learn a lot. Like, she's going to learn a lot, and I know you're probably going to learn a lot from that situation.
Yeah, totally. And, the other side of this is I think you touched on it before. It might be like a little out there for some people, but like just this idea, like I always think it's better to bring your personality into like who you are as a clinician. And when you go to first do content, especially like video content, it's so easy to just be a robot.
Yeah.
And it's challenging to like actually be comfortable enough to talk in your own voice. And that's something worth practicing, I think, and like figuring out. Because ideally you can do that. You can be yourself with your clients, you know, in terms of like how you communicate and how you mix maybe like humor into your interactions and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. And as like a younger, newer clinician too, like that confidence is in yourself is super important to have. And I think you're right. Like figuring out your voice and like bringing your personality into that is super important. And you know, getting in front of the camera is a good way to practice it. Like I know all of us have developed over the years of getting in front of the camera, or even from being on this podcast and trying to communicate and bring our own personalities into it. I think that is definitely important. And you get a lot of bloopers out of it too.
And like I think what the main message we want to put out too is like, if you view it this way, you can really remove all those pressures, you know, like of like trying to gain a following or like trying to post every day and like build a brand. Like it's not really about that. Like if you posted once a week, and who cares about how many followers you have? It's just about like your ability to like synthesize your thoughts and practice like delivering the information, practice creating the story. Like those are things that you're going to gain from that regardless of whether you post all the time or not.
Yeah. I think the last thing maybe I'll comment on and then we can wrap up, because I know we don't want to make this one super long, but I think thinking of it as building skills, like you're working on building skills that are going to benefit you long-term clinically, but also in your life. Like it's important to be able to communicate clearly. It's important to be able to, you know, take information that's complex, synthesize it, and then put it in your own like personality, whether that be clinically or whether that be in your day-to-day life. So viewing the content piece as an ability to build these skills over time takes that pressure off. And as a byproduct of that, you're probably going to build a following. You're going to start developing your brand. You're going to start learning your values and how you want to show up as a clinician or as a person. Like those things are going to show up over time of just focusing on building the skills. And that is what I think super important for clinicians to think about, and why I think we encourage people to create content.
That's perfect.
Sweet. Let's wrap it up.
Let's do it.
All right, guys. If you aren't following us on Instagram, make sure you head over there, follow us at PT Coffee Cast. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on your podcast platform. That way you don't miss out on any of our new episodes. We are on YouTube now, so subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can see Will's beautiful beard and my not so beautiful beard. It's a little gruffy these days. I've been letting it grow out, but
yours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to see the beard, make sure you subscribe to YouTube. And then lastly, if you want to join the mentorship wait list, you can do that through the link in our bio on Instagram or through the show notes. That will put you on the wait list for when we release the application to sign up for our first cohort, which we are planning to launch in April. So that is all we got for today, guys. As always, stay caffeinated. Peace.